Action. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Teach for the Bay virtual workshop series for October 8th. Today you are in a workshop for creating equity with community resources. Your presenter is Joseph Porter, and this workshop is brought to you by Diablo Valley College. If you want more information about Diablo Valley College, you can contact me, Angela Bever, at abever@dvc.edu. Okay, please type your full name, your email, where you're from, and what brings you to this workshop in the chat. And we're going to begin with our workshop today, Creating Equity with Community Resources. Your presenter is Joseph Porter. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Mr. Porter. He grew up in Bay Point and moved to Concord at 13 years old. He graduated from Mount Diablo High School in 2004 and joined the Marines in October 2004. He enrolled at DVC in 2011 and graduated with 3 associate degrees: history, anthropology, and geography. And Mr. Porter is going to tell you a little bit more about himself.
Hi, everyone. So I kind of want to go back all the way up into the corner when I started as a lifeguard. It was, I want to say, my sophomore year. I started a job over there with my friends at Six Flags in Concord. And I stayed there all the way until I left for the Marines. I quit in 2004, September. And in October, I had left. They sent me on a plane down to San Diego, and I spent 3 months there. I spent 4 years, just about 4 years in the Marines. I got out in January of 2008. And from there, I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went and I started a job at AAA, being a battery service technician. Actually, I have some of my stuff here. Here's my old manual that I kept from there, and I have some pictures of exactly what that job looks like, being out there on the road. One of the good things that I took from that experience was kind of just helping out individuals, which is originally what I intended on doing, both as a lifeguard and as a Marine. I wanted to help people, and I kind of stuck with that kind of all throughout any of my job experiences. One of the things that they taught me that obviously I would need resources for, but was to unlock vehicles, which I thought was pretty cool, like the fact that you kind of come to someone's rescue. And so here's what a lockout kit would look like. Not always going to use this on every single vehicle, but these are just some of the resources that a AAA service technician has. If any of you have ever had AAA come out, or just a tow truck experience like that. From there, I went to go and work security over in the shopping center. I didn't really like that as much, but I like to continue to help people. From there, I went back to working for the government. I went back down to San Diego. I stayed there for about a year as a quality control supervisor, helping with military personnel and their families transition from one base to the next. Also for those individuals that were going on deployments, coming back from deployments. But I kind of wanted to do more. So I quit that job, and in the spring of 2011, I enrolled at DVC and decided to use my entitlement. And I stayed there for about a year. I still didn't know what I wanted to do in regards to my education. So I took another job back at Six Flags in 2012 over in Vallejo. And then I went on from there to being a tow truck operator right here all the way from Antioch through Orinda. And that was a good experience. But if you notice that in 2014, it says motorcycle wreck. So everything kind of got put to a halt. In 2014, I was riding a motorcycle with my dad, and a car came out and hit me, threw me over the freeway divider. And it was kind of at that point that I said, well, if I can't do these other jobs, security, lifeguard, working as a tow truck operator, then I might as well go back to school. So that's what I did once I had healed up in 2015. It was after that I had chose to get a first degree working towards history. There was some difficulties, especially with some of my injuries, but I continued to persevere. And at that point, I was just so focused on getting that history degree that I never took any electives. So I ended up getting my degree in history, but I wasn't able to transfer yet. So I decided to take another semester and get a second one in anthropology. But even though I had those 2 degrees, I still kind of wanted to do more, especially with my transition to CSU East Bay, which wasn't for about a year. So I decided to pursue another degree. But while I was taking those courses towards my anthropology degree, I got introduced to the class Early Childhood Education, the 120, which was Introduction to Teaching with Mrs. Bever. And so out of all the classes, I kind of enjoyed that one the most, just because I felt like everything else was just, oh, well, you have to study this and, take this quiz, as opposed to Education 120, which you were one-on-one with the kids, and that was really enjoyable. And from there, I kind of wanted to be around every day. So instead of having about 54 hours, I think it was, in regards to field hours, I ended up having like 120 because I just wanted to be there so much. But it was pretty much everything up to that experience, and then transitioning into CSU East Bay is what led me up to wanting to do even more. So if we can actually transition to the next slide, Mr. Bever.
All right. So tell us more about what interested you in going to college.
So one of the most important things was the fact that, obviously I've been through a lot of occupations. And the second thing was that with the motorcycle wreck not allowing me to be involved with certain careers anymore, I decided that college is going to be the best, for me. So I kind of stuck with that, and it led to a lot of great stuff. But I just wanted to have a different path, because I felt like those other jobs weren't something that I would be able to do as I got older. Even a Marine, right? You can't keep up with the younger Marines, so eventually you're gonna have to transition into doing something different. So this was that something different.
Right. And tell us more, why did you choose to get 3 degrees instead of just 1?
So I kind of already went over the first 2, why I kind of got those 2. But in regards to getting the geography degree and moving towards the early childhood education, I just felt like all 3 of those degrees, history, anthropology, geography, kind of crossed paths to an interdisciplinary situation. But also, those 3 degrees, when I was thinking about them in regards to early childhood education and how I'd be able to better serve the kids, especially now, the fact that I've started to create this tutoring, well, I did create a tutoring center, and I'm moving more towards having a foundation. I understand the history behind the city that I'm in. But 2, I kind of have an understanding of the world overall through anthropology and culture, and 3, through the migration of those individuals that have moved about, both through political roles in regards to our government and the social injustice that is currently going on throughout each society. That's why I chose to do those three.
That's incredible. Okay, Mr. Porter, why did you gravitate toward sociocultural anthropology? How does that relate to this picture that you've chosen here with the motorcycle?
So that picture I had taken, about a year ago, Mrs. Bever?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I was actually planning on doing a fundraiser this year, but more so, the reason I went towards sociocultural anthropology over history and geography was having to do with the students inside the schools of Bay Point, and how I can understand and do better research to assist them in the community with their overall needs. So that I felt like that one would have been the most important out of anything, being on the ground, because anthropologists, instead of just doing their research and saying, hey, well, I'm going to do this and it's going to work out great. That's not always the case. Just like the same thing with some of my previous occupations, like you can be in training and you might go out on the tow truck call and somebody had drove their car over a cliff or something. The training doesn't really kind of show you that. And so in a sense, with sociocultural anthropology and early childhood education, I'm able to do participant observation with the kids and the community and the teachers, and see exactly where things can be improved. So that's why I ended up gravitating more towards this degree as opposed to the other ones in regards to higher education.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. And I'm going to read this quote first. Education does not change the world. Education changes people. People change the world. Now, you chose this quote specifically. Tell us why you chose this quote. How does it gravitate? Why did it gravitate towards you?
So this one is in regards to my philosophy of education course that I'm currently attending. And I wanted to, for me, it kind of spoke to me. Because in a sense, like education doesn't change the world, because without people, right, like that wouldn't exist. So for me, education has necessarily changed like my views on things and how I can do research, and then I can use that research in order to change the world. I think another reason why this kind of stuck with me too was I actually grew up in Bay Point, and I went to all the same schools, and I kind of see the way that these kids are struggling. And I say, well, I was probably one of those kids, growing up, but at the same time, like you don't really notice the amount of resources that a child has in regards to the school, because you're not comparing yourself to the next school. So now that I'm older, I'm able to do that. And it was kind of only through education that showed me that. And that's why I feel like this quote is very important.
It's very powerful. Thank you. Okay, tell us more about how you're changing the world around you, Mr. Porter. I see you have a picture of all three of your degrees there.
Yeah. So honestly, it's more so just with the students that I'm kind of being able to change the world around me. Back when I was in the Education 120 course, I was telling Mrs. Bever about this, but it was just like there was this one day, and I was sitting with one of the students, and he started laughing. I didn't even know why. It didn't really matter. Um, but it was kind of one of the most important things, like, that I've had throughout any of my experience, through any of the institutions that I've been in. Um, and so I kind of just said, well, now that they've made my world better, like, how can I make their world better?
And you're thinking about the students, the children you're working with.
Yeah. So just because, like, my world changed, but yet theirs was still the same. So in a sense, by creating this tutoring center, something that, doesn't really exist throughout Bay Point, I basically took it upon myself to make this happen.
Okay. Well, before we get to the tutoring center, what are some things that you've done at the school in Bay Point, Shore Acres, that have made an impact on the students?
So one of the things that's shown right here is the boys running team. The girls always had a running team, but there's not a lot of male educators. So I think that in regards to me already, like, learning all these different lessons, and realizing the lack of resources that the kids had, I was kind of willing to do anything at this point. Um, I was never on the track team, but I was on the swim team. I was a varsity wrestler. Used to run a lot in the Marines. And when Mrs. Bever said, like, what do you think about basically being the coach for the boys running team? And I just rolled with it. There was no questions about whether or not, I was going to. It was, no, I'm going to do this, like, full force. And I never looked back. So basically, this was last year, right before COVID. The boys had ran their first 5K with me. So I think that was really awesome. And I was able to reflect on my own life during that time too. If you look up in the right-hand corner, you'll see me taking Mrs. Bever's taking a picture of me with a Marine Corps shirt. Well, my dad had bought me that shirt. And so I kind of tied in a little bit of my own history to their present, and made another memory. But my dad had bought me that shirt, and it's got the Eagle Globe and Anchor on it, which is the Marines crest, our symbol. But he told me that I'm not allowed to wear it until I become a Marine. So the boys' shirts there, which I brought one of them so you can kind of see it a little bit better. I ended up basically spending my own money on getting the boys' shirts, so that way they had one, and they earned it. So I kind of got to basically, I don't have kids, but it was just something that was meaningful to me, and I was glad that I was able to provide that. And I'd spent so many months with them training, that seeing them do it every day just was just like, man, this is motivating in itself. The fact that these guys are willing to give up their recess. And that was the thing, is because of my other job, I wasn't able to have them run after school with like the girls running team. So they had to give up their recess almost every day. So those boys clearly earned that.
And you know what I think was the most incredible thing is that these boys were so proud to be a part of the team. It's true. I'm one of the girls coaches, and we always try to have a girls team. And the boys always wondered, what about boys on the run? What about the boys team? And when I asked Mr. Porter to do it, he just took it and literally ran with it and made it so incredibly successful and memorable. So speaking of your other job, can you tell us a little bit more about what that was?
Yeah. So I was volunteering for a while before I decided to take a job with the district. I kind of didn't want to go to another school at this time. Like, I wish I could have got a job at Shore Acres with the after school program there. But they ended up giving me the job down at the school about half mile down the road. And basically what it is you're just an after school program coordinator. You can assist the kids in their reading, being able to do some homework. You take them outside and do activities with them. Um, and basically you have to plan out those activities every week. So I just wanted to basically be around more and do more. And then I was in both schools. I actually got to do like a planned event that was them coming out and playing basketball against each other, which is, very interesting, especially because I never played basketball before. So I had to learn all the different positions and everything. But I'm very active. And so I basically did the same thing. I took it and ran with it. And I'm still actually currently working there. It's kind of hard, because you can't see the kids. I know Ms. Bever knows how that is. She has to do her Zoom classes with her own students. And so now I kind of get to see some of them because some of them are here inside my tutoring center, which is really cool. But I had basically taken that job. Here's actually my Mount Diablo Care shirt. Just says staff on the back, and here's our little logo. But it was basically just a way to kind of get out there more and get more experience, and kind of also research at the same time, which all pretty much led up to this. I got kids from multiple schools, and their parents, they love it because they need this throughout the community. I even have one of them, they were just like, honestly, I don't know what I would do if you weren't here. And so that kind of drives me more to make this bigger and better, and some of it's my own money, some of it's donations. I have friends throughout the community that own restaurants, and I've even had a background in getting donations for veteran services and stuff like that. So it's something that I'm kind of used to, which the rest of it is pretty much just making those acquaintances throughout. Like even working right now, I'm currently working with the church and they're donating the space for free. So that's one of the cool things about this.
So you have given us a little bit of information about what you're doing now. And so beyond working at this elementary school, beyond working in the after school program, you've created your own community resource in Bay Point, a resource that is currently has never existed in the community. And if you don't know about Bay Point, there is not even a grocery store. There's no Safeway. There's no Trader Joe's. There's no park. There's no community park in Bay Point. There really isn't a lot of community resources for children and for families. So, Mr. Porter, can you tell us more about that?
So yeah, the other slide, was pretty much like everything I did up until, today. And there's some stuff on this next slide that kind of shows a forward progress. Like I said, I've always tried to stick with, stuff that has helped people, whether it was being lifeguard through the Marines, any of my jobs. But those all led me to DVC. And I have DVC and CSU East Bay kind of on the same line because they're a progression. Like I obviously have gotten 3 degrees from DVC, but I think the 2 most important were anthropology and early childhood education in regards to what I'm going to do next. And if you look above, I have College Mentor above DVC, my research above CSU East Bay, and kind of being mixed in the middle is eventually once I get my anthropology, I can move towards my teaching credentials just to better serve the schools and the teachers. Because there's a lot of times to where it's just like, oh, well, we had this teacher call out And I'm in the back of the classroom with Miss Bever, and it's like, Mr. Porter, we have 10 more students joining us today. And so I'm back there, as kind of like a paraeducator, which is really cool, because I get like a different experience. But I just, like, for me, it was just never enough. And so I kind of want to do something more even outside of the school, because what happens when the kids get out of school? Yeah, that's great that I can have activities and stuff to do with the kids, but there was still a community need. And the fact that these students, weren't getting that resource of having homework help or having a tutor to better help understand, the work that they're given. My experience with Mrs. Bever's class, but I went beyond that because I ended up volunteering. Like every day I was inside a new classroom. Even though I was in college, still doing, 4 to 5 classes, I still made time for every single, class there was. I had them, separated. On Mondays, I would be going to the kindergarten class. On Tuesdays, I would be going to the 4th grade class. On Wednesdays, I would be sticking with Miss Bever because it was an early day and I had to be over at the other school. Thursdays, I was with the other 4th grade class. Fridays, I did the 5th grade class, and this was all in between like my classes, my studying, the boys running team every day. Like, so for me, it just like made what I wanted to do outside of the school even more important, and which eventually I'll lead up to end up creating a foundation, but it's just not there yet. So the reason why I made this chart is because this was like a progression chart of plans that I have for the future.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, let's talk more about this Contra Costa Tutoring Center. When did you start it? Why did you start it? And tell us more about that.
So it was this summer in June. There was one of the local businesses basically struggling to make ends meet. And I decided that I would get involved. And I had basically already been doing my research and things like that. I had parents that, because of COVID, they needed a place for their kids to be able to come, whether they were dropping them off or just sitting there with them, didn't really matter. So I ended up working with one business, and the time that they didn't have like to be there for what they were doing, I would come in and I went out and bought all new equipment. Some of the stuff is in there. I bought STEM stuff. I bought books. I went out and bought tables, chairs, just basically everything that I could basically do to help out the students. And then I started promoting it. Besides the parents that I had already talked to, I went out and stood out in front of the schools when we were handing out lunches, things like that. That's pretty much what I did most of the summer, was actually hand out lunches from the schools. And one of the principals was like, he's in charge, because he had so much on his plate too. So, I was just able to kind of help out as much as I could. And then that new building, actually right there, is actually the church. The church wanted to have a place that they could help out the community as much as they could, but obviously, given their education, like background, they didn't really have, I guess, the resources to help out. And the woman who operates the church, her son's a Marine too, and so she was just like, wow, it kind of seems like we are kind of meant to come into this together. And so I ended up moving out of the other space, which was down the way, and they are able to fully operate again, and moved into the church. And so pretty much that's how things have progressed for the tutoring center, which I still plan on expanding. And there, even on the other side of Bay Point, there's a learning center, but they aren't homework help. They're kind of more activity based as well, and they charge. that's the one thing that I basically was like, you know what? Well, I'm not going to charge the families because, in regards to like what Paulo Freire is talking about, he's basically talking about an oppressor and the oppressed. And in regards to capitalism, you can't be somebody who says, I want to help out, and at the same time saying, well, I'm going to use capitalism to fund this idea. So, because otherwise you become the oppressor in regards to charging the families for something that should already exist. So, I feel like this is kind of one of those steps towards that situation that I don't want to charge the families. And the reason why is because I already know why I'm here. I mean, I've kind of been blessed with the fact that I'm retired from the Marines, so that helps out, and they're paying for my education. So I've kind of been given so much. So why shouldn't I give back? That's how I feel.
Wow, thank you. It's inspiring. So I think everyone wants to know how they can create change in their own communities. So what recommendations do you have for us today?
So honestly, for like the kids, I mean, even the teachers, just to have that uh, extra hand is to volunteer. Obviously, right now it's kind of hard, with COVID. But normally, when the schools would be fully operational, as long as you do the stuff that you need to throughout the district, you can go become a college mentor yourself. Um, I don't think any school would necessarily turn you down from wanting to help out, you know. Uh, so go become a college mentor. I don't know where you guys are at in your education, but like for Mrs. Bever's class, her Education 120 course, that's like the start of it. You have to do field hours. You can kind of get firsthand experience and attend a once a week night class, which is beneficial, and work out your day around, the schedule, that was like where everything has started for me, at least, being involved in the schools. Because before that, I was just, I'm just going to hang out at DVC. I kind of never left. And then I like transitioned to basically almost never leaving Shore Acres, elementary. So I would say, yeah, volunteer as much as you can inside the schools and find out what they need from there, in each school. Because, I mean, each one is going to be different,
Right.
And, yeah.
Anything else?
Well, I was just going to say about the statistics thing. I don't know if you have that other slide up.
We do. Okay, let's go to it. Here we go.
So this was one of the basically statistics that I was reading. And Bay Point is one of those cities that it has, I can't remember the exact number on it, but the majority of the students are Hispanic of any race. And if you look at the statistics here, it's talking about the population and, when they've obtained their high school graduation degree, like their diplomas. But you can see that that rate is actually very low. And then it's like, okay, well, you got some college or more, associate's degree. And this is like 25, and older, 35 and up. And so for me, like this was part of the research. And I was just like, well, we need to change this. This is just part of the equity in it. And I mean, it kind of breaks down into male and female and everything like that. And but nevertheless, I was just like, this is one of those communities that, for whatever reason, their graduation rates are significantly lower than every other ethnicity. So I kind of wanted to do more research on that. And that's why I stuck with this slide to show you guys the progression of people moving more towards getting their degrees.
All right, thank you. And Talking more about starting your community tutoring center, what are some of your successes and what are your future goals?
So the successes was just like one, obviously finding a facility because you can't really like I went around for a little bit and I was working with the families that I had already kind of had a relationship with, and it was basically just going from house to house and tutoring. And this was even before COVID. I've been doing that, I don't know, probably for about like 6 months prior to, because one of the students was really struggling, and I was working with them when they were in fifth grade. Now they're in seventh grade, and they still, have some of the same, issues, but now there's a whole new set of issues. Online learning, it's hard enough for college students, let alone, a 6-year-old, a 10-year-old, even basically some of these junior high students I've had, which I haven't been able to get into yet, but some of the high schools, they're just like, hey, can you, come over here and create this over here? And it's just like, you know, well, I can't right now, but eventually I'll be able to get to do that. Especially my old high school, they were just like, it would be great if you came back. We could really use the help. And so that's something that I have to look forward to. But I think right now, it's something that I would be doing on my own because even my own tutors that I have don't have the same education I do. Like, and I would like for them to be able to go to college as well and get their degrees and, kind of do this. If they want to stay with me, they can stay with me. If they want to, maybe do it where they live at, we can help them out and basically recreate the same thing that I'm doing here, and find, in a sense, them some sort of funding, building space, stuff like that. So,
All right. Okay. So I think it's time for questions. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you everyone for joining us today.